Hello, and welcome to Stories from the View, a podcast from the Pleasant View Senior Center in East Longmeadow, Massachusetts. On this podcast, we invite East Longmeadow residents to tell us stories about their lives and events, and today's guest is near lifelong resident of East Longmeadow, Chris Dowd, and here's your host, Mary Genowan Kaplan.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Mary.
Thank you so much for coming today.
I am flattered to be here.
Well, we are excited to hear your story, and so let's just get going. Why don't you start at the beginning?
At the beginning. Okay. Well, near lifelong residence. I was born in Pennsylvania. My dad was in the Army. Lived there till, I think, maybe just before 2. Then off to Nashua, New Hampshire, where 2 of my sisters were born. And then to Jericho, Vermont. And that's where the memories for me starts to get exciting or interesting, because that's when my memories mostly start. We were in the sticks out there, and lived there till I was in about 2nd grade. Then we moved to East Longmeadow, mid-2nd grade.
And then life truly began.
Then it did. My first day at school, the teacher had me read aloud, and I spoke differently. Had used words like said has been was has been to the store, and I said has been, and the class laughed, and the teacher pulled me out and corrected me, and I went home and said, I want to move home. I want to move back. But I'm glad we stuck it out, because East Longmeadow has ended up being an amazing place for not only me to grow, but for my wife and I to bring our family here, to have our kids go through the school system and thrive in their directions that they're at.
Well, I'm glad you stuck it out. At age 7, you probably didn't have a very big vote in the family location.
Yeah, no, Dad's job was more important.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right.
It has been a good time for
It
you.
really has. It has been many interesting avenues. So, so I went to Meadowbrook School. That's where I took 2nd grade. And then went to Birchland Park. I've heard many of your other guests talk about going to Birchland Park. I was also there when it was split in 2 with a separate hallway for the elementary school on one end and middle school on the other. And then my most cherished memories there, I'd say, were some of the field days. I broke my arm in the running long jump in 7th or 8th grade. And my feet were in first place, but my arm was in 3rd.
I think the statute of limitations is up, so you can't sue the town.
Oh, no.
Good.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah. But what made it memorable was at the end of the 8th grade, they had this 8th grade student body goes into the theater there, and they're showing slideshows, and it's a whole party thing. And somebody had taken a picture of me and my jump. And when that picture came up, the entire student body had cheered and roared, and so
Because they know how it ended.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it made it really, really memorable for me from there. So yeah, so then then off to East Longmeadow High School, and thoroughly enjoyed jazz band in there.
You're a musician.
I am. My grandfather was a musician out of Lowell, Mass. Had his own orchestra.
Ooh.
And he played everything: mandolin, saxophone. I have 2 of his saxophones, guitars, you name it. And so I took up the trombone, and that's how I learned some jazz. But I stuck with that all through high school, and then going to marching the parades and whatnot.
The famous 4th of July parade, or are there others?
No, the 4th of July parade. I marched it every year since I was here through my senior year in high school. My senior year in high school, I marched it twice. I had also
You had a
joined.
do-over?
No, I belonged to a drum and bugle corps. So the East Longmeadow band always went first back then. Back when the parade went the well, some call it the correct way, the other way, where it started from Birchland.
Townies will know. Townies.
Right. And the drum and bugle corps I was part of, out of Enfield, was one of the last. So when I finished with the high school band, I had my bicycle and my change of uniform set up, rode my bike back to Birchland, and then jumped in the parade again and played one of the big horns that we play for the drum and bugle corps.
Kind of like Superman into a phone booth and then transform.
It was amazing. So, and then
That might be a record for. I don't know if other people have done that.
I don't know.
You heard it here first, folks.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. And then shortly after high school, I got interested in cars and going back to the parade. The parade's always been a staple for us. I had a car. My dad always liked Sunday morning Dunkin' Donuts before they were in town. So we would go to the one at the X. So I said, Dad, I'll go get the donuts today. So I go off and I get the donuts. So I stopped off at Birchland because this is right before the 4th of July parade. I stopped off at Birchland and just to see the cars and whatnot. And one of the groups was there, says, "Oh, we could use a few more cars. You know, I know your car. Would you mind jumping in the parade?" And being a Boy Scout and prepared, sure. So I pulled out the detail rags. We all wiped on the car. I was in the parade. Meanwhile, my parents are still waiting for their donuts.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
So I get to the center of town. That's where we always watch the parade from. And I pull up, and my parents are looking at me like, "How did you end up in this parade?" And they're handing a box of Dunkin' Donuts out the window, and so yeah, that was another.
you really deliver.
That was that was in style. That one there, yeah. So, but sticking with the parade, I actually got engaged at the 4th of July parade.
With donuts? How did this happen?
So I had planned it for a while, and I told Mary Beth, my wife, she's part of a large family. I said, we should, 4th of July is always a big deal at our house. We have big parties and barbecues and whatnot. We should get your family here, and they'll watch the parade and whatnot. So I had two close.
Because they were far away in Springfield.
Yeah.
So they made the commute.
Yeah,
their
from Hungry Hill.
Okay.
They came down and at the East Long Meadow, and they helped us clog the Rotary with people. And two very close and dear friends there, Sandro Meccia and Rocky Chapdelaine. I told my wife that I had to put a banner on their truck. Sandro had a landscaping business, still does, great guy. So I met another guy. I had Mary Beth come with me to the guy to make the banners. It was Kevin Moriarty. He used to have a little vinyl sign deal he used to make. And while Mary Beth was waiting in the car on State Street, that's where his shop was back then, I went inside to his storefront and we designed up, MB Will You Marry Me banner that would roll down from the truck. And he sees the car there. I said, I got to make this quick. I get this done. He goes, wait a minute. She's in the car waiting? And I said, yes. He goes, I like you. It was fun. So here we are. We're at the parade. I'm nervous Nelly. I've got the ring in my pocket. And here comes the Mex landscaping truck. And the banner's rolled up. And now Mary Beth knew about the banner, but she thought I was just doing it for him for Mex landscaping. So my buddy Rocky and Sandro inside the truck, I said, grab Mary Beth by arm, didn't even look at her in the eye. I said, he forgot to open the banner. And we run out in the middle of the Rotary, and we pull the strings, and it unfurled, and it says, MB, will you marry me? And I'm on one knee. And Rocky gets out with a cooler, 2 bottles of champagne, and she goes, oh my gosh, yes. And so we did it right there.
And her whole family was there, and
Yes.
they are a large family, so
Yeah.
you were clogging the Rotary. Yes.
And it is on, I was told that somebody was able to find it on LCAT recorded, and I do have it. Of course, it doesn't have me asking. You could just see commotion going on and, a thing unfurling and somebody going like this. And I had people coming up with Polaroid pictures. Yes, that's how old I am. And handing me photos. That was the most beautiful thing I ever saw. So yeah, so that kind of cinched us into, East Long Meadow being a place that we knew that we would want to try and raise a family in and whatnot. So
Little East Long Meadow another spot in East Long Meadow history.
yes. So we got married the following year, and then we lived in Chicopee and then Munson. We moved to Munson. Mary Beth was 4 months pregnant. We lived there for about 19 years, almost 20 years. And then in that meantime, my sister had bought my house that I grew up in. She bought our parents' house. One little thing about our neighborhood, there are many families in our neighborhood that are second owners of their parents' homes even in our little corner.
So legacy owners, so to speak.
It's a legacy neighborhood. It's coming on its third generation now. There's, we're getting to be the older people in the neighborhood, seeing the kids run around and we don't know who they are. But so one winter Christmas party, the people next door, Jim and Patty Ford, came over to say hi. They were snowbirds, and they said, we're thinking of selling our house. And my wife's eyes just lit up because we were been talking about it. And so I said to Mary Beth, you want to move into that house? She's like, yes. Without even seeing it, just knowing the neighborhood and knowing that our kids' cousins would be right next door and whatnot. So I had mentioned to them about, the possibility, and they jumped at the chance.
Not having to go through the whole realtor
We won't even put it on the
sales,
market. Yep, we'll just do it.
And we know a family will take good care of our house.
They loved the fact that we were going to be the next people in their house. So it all worked out fine, and got through the struggles of selling our house in Munson and blah, blah, blah. And so we moved back to East Long Meadow, and our kids were able to get into the school system. And the perspective for me, being somebody who was, a kid with a paper route, going down to Shawmut Bank, sitting on the half wall there, watching the softball games at the center of town. Now I'm back as an adult with my own kids and they're going to get their own experiences. My son's a musician. I had a daughter who was an artist and another daughter who was an athlete. And they each went their own avenues here in this town, which definitely had a place for them. So, so it's been great getting that part for them.
Amazing. It's the circle of life. It continues.
Yes. So I wanted to back up just a little bit. In between me leaving high school and then getting married, I got very interested in cars, and that's what led me into the parade and all that stuff. I also joined a NASCAR team.
NASCAR?
Yep.
NASCAR.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was a
just
local
general.
NASCAR team.
Okay.
Open wheel modifieds for Dan Avery. We raced at Riverside mostly, but we did some traveling down south, Martinsville, Virginia, Rougemont, North Carolina, some local tracks around here too in the New England, New Jersey area. So cars have always been a passion of mine. And then
So were you a driver on the pit crew?
I was pit crew.
You now have heard all of my driving vernacular. That's all I know.
Yes. My sister does it best, Jennifer. She's like, when she'll try and mention car parts and mix them all together, and it's a comedic line all on its own. The dual quad with it's just funny. I can't even do it, but yes. So that was 10 years, and then I went. I took printing in high school. I went to the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative, which was a trade school that at the time you would bus out at noontime and you would take extra hours and you could pick up a trade. Wanted to be an architect, but funding had cut that program. And so my guidance counselor said, well, printing uses T-squares. So I went into printing. So
Interesting connection, but close enough.
Right. And at the mean, while I was in high school, my first job was at McGill Hose and Coupling, which was a small company in the industrial park in a building taking up about 10,000 square feet. And after graduating high school, I went into the printing for about 30 years. And printing had its struggles in this area. There are some really good print shops left. But I decided it was time for me to try something else. So I am back at McGill Hose. They now have a 90,000 square foot building and 3 locations. So it is a amazing growth for them as well. But so it's been quite a journey.
And all roads lead back to 01028. I'm fascinated with this.
Oh, good.
Keep coming back.
Yeah. So my wife and I were dating for about 6 years. She stuck with me, and by going into printing, that meant I went into second shift, which allowed me to really assess leaving the pit crew. Had to start growing up, right? Adulting, as my wife calls it. So she stuck with me through the second shift, and we started the family, and it worked out very nicely because then we worked opposite shifts for almost 20 years, and I was part of
Hence the longevity of your strong marriage.
Right, yeah.
Or tag teaming it.
Sure, the distance makes the heart grow fonder, right? But no, it's worked out really well. Then since now I'm back on days, as you know. But yeah. So now we have one in college who is starting to be an architect. She did not know that I wanted to be an architect. So that's Caitlin. And then my son's a musician, doing very well with that as well. And my daughter Siobhan is living in Providence, and she is an arts major with a background in media. And COVID kind of set that back a little bit too, but she's finally starting to get back into the media and hopefully get some stuff going there too. So it should be good.
That's great.
Yeah, again, that's what this town, I think, has allowed many opportunities, whatever your interests are, and they allow those interests to be explored. Mm-hmm. And so we're very grateful for that.
Absolutely. And that brings us to today, I guess.
Yeah. Trying to think of what else would be interesting to say.
Well, you don't have to worry about that. I guess maybe we'll ask, do you have any parting words, any advice, any shout-outs you want to make?
I will say for me, coming back to East Long Meadow as an adult, I was fortunate enough to also to make new friends. We met Keith Gibbings. My daughter Caitlin was wanting to play basketball, and she did not know anybody. We did not know anybody. Keith was coaching Park and Rec at the time,
and it's kind of hard to come back into town. And she was maybe middle schoolish.
She was, yeah. Well, that was where the separate. So in Munson, she was considered in middle school, but in East Long Meadow, it was considered the last year of grade school.
Ah.
So I think she was 4th or 5th grade. I forget what that was. I know, I got to do this again. So we were lucky enough to have Kevin Moriarty. He knew Keith Gibbings, and he says, I know a guy, and he would love to have Caitlin play. So sure enough, Keith contacted me. He says, I need an assistant coach. I said, wonderful, I'll jump in. So I jumped in assistant coach. My daughter came along. She agreed to play with us in Park and Rec. And now our daughters are lifelong friends. They're still best friends. And we took a championship the second year of coaching. And he got her to play field hockey. So she played field hockey through high school. And had an amazing senior year. I think there was one plaque in the high school trophy case for field hockey from 1967, 72, something very early on. And her team was the first team to actually get a second recognition in there.
Decades later.
Yes. So she has a legacy as well. 14 wins, one tie and one loss or something like that. But so it was a pinnacle for her. So again, being part of that coaching and seeing, so I had one playing on the field, and we also would go to the football games. But it wasn't the watching the football games was always fun, and the games were good. But our son played in the band. So we were in the band section and we're cheering on our son.
You were there for halftime.
Yes, exactly. We were there for halftime and the chili dogs.
Whatever the motivation.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. So as a returnee to town, has it helped you appreciate the value of this community in a whole different light? I mean, you see it through a kid's eyes,
right?
And it's great fun. But now as an adult and viewing it from afar.
Yes. And as a kid, I think I can say from a lot of kids growing up in town, it was, there wasn't a lot to do, or, the sports now I think have changed that dramatically. But yes, and I have many friends who have left East Long Meadow, and I knew at one point, like, yeah, I got to leave this town. But coming back was definitely, it was definitely a great choice for us. And both perspectives were very interesting, and continue as the adult in watching the kids come and go. We'll see if they land here as well. And although I'm pretty sure Siobhan's going to go to Ireland.
That's where she's headed?
Yeah, she studied abroad there 1 year, and I think she wants to go there. So,
well, we probably have to do a shout out because I know she was involved in St. Michael's Players.
Yes.
So
yes.
I mean, we did cover Eamon and
Yes.
Kate. So
let's give Siobhan a shout out.
Let's
yes.
give Siobhan
And
due.
she was fortunate enough to also meet the amazing Rose Stella, who I know was on your show as well.
Absolutely.
And so she got a scholarship from them too. She got an award from them as well. But so Siobhan studied abroad. She's a phenomenal writer. Ireland is known for their writing, I guess. Mm-hmm. And her professor saw some of her writing and wanted to submit it to some competitions out there. So she did very well.
Time will tell.
And she loved it. So she's very artistic.
Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. This was just a hoot to hear your many stories, especially your parade legacy. I was not aware of all of that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Chris, for being here today. That wraps up another episode of Stories from the View, and we'd like to thank Chris Dowd for being here today and being so entertaining for us. The Stories from the View podcast is available on the LCAT 01028 channel on YouTube and on Spotify. If you have a story you'd like to share on the program, contact Pleasant View Senior Center Director Aaron Kobler by stopping by the Pleasant View Senior Center, or you can also call Aaron 525-5436, extension 1401. Or you can send her an email at aaron.kobler@eastlongmeadowma.gov. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Stories from the View.